Hello and welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. I hope you are very well. Today we have got a really fun episode that is about when you're on this edge of feeling like there's something going to happen or that things are going really well, or you're just sort of like stepping into that next version of your business, of you as a business owner, as an entrepreneur. This comes up a lot and is really exciting. But before we dive into that, I hope you are very well. I hope you are having a fantastic time in your business. I hope you're having a lovely summer. If you're listening to this when the episode launches, I am just back from holiday, which was absolutely fabulous. And I had such a lovely time. I just sort of really relaxed and it was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted and needed. So that is very fun. We are going to have a summer podcast break in the middle of August. So you've got sort of this episode and another episode, and then we're going to take a sort of 2-week mini summer break just to let the team and myself have a bit of a downtime and relax. And then we'll be back in your ears from September. So just so you know what's going on, that is what's happening. Feel free to go back through the huge back catalogue now that we have of various different episodes. And if you don't know, we do have a thing called the podcast playlist now, where we sat and categorized into, I think there's 8 different playlists, different categories. We've got sales, leadership, team, the behind the scenes of my business, like loads of different playlists where you can get access to them. You get sent a link with all of them on, and you can just tap them and listen to them. So if you want a kind of curated way of listening to the podcast without it kind of jumping from all the different topics, that is a fab option for you. You can go to mayjames.com/playlists, and yeah, you can type your email in and we'll send you an email with all the links and you can have access. And it's kind of like a secret, private way of viewing and listening to the podcast. There's over sort of 60 hours, I think now, of incredible content and education, and we kind of wanted to create that as an idea of go to May James Business School and be able to listen to education that is actually helpful for you building your business versus just going to business school and learning theory that has very little application to what you're trying to do. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode, which is around how do you really capitalize? How do you lean into that moment where you have this feeling of thinking things are changing, or something's cool's happening here, or I'm evolving, or something's pivoting, or I'm feeling really good about where I'm going, or I know I'm on this like leap pad moment? Because everybody as entrepreneurs gets there at some point. Some people have it numerous times. Some people, you might be experiencing it for the first time. I hope that if you're listening to this, maybe you are feeling like this right now, and it's such a special and beautiful time. And the reason I thought I'd do an episode on this is, one, it's really helpful for you, the content that is going to be shared, but also two, is that I have the privilege of seeing this play out for entrepreneurs around the world, of different stages of entrepreneurs, of different ages, in different industries, and I see kind of how far that this opportunity can go. I also see what happens when people do various things that kind of hinder it. I also see when people get scared by it and kind of retract back. So I've got a good scope and a good eye for being able to help you really capitalize on how to get the most out of that experience and that kind of feeling of things are moving, things are changing. And the first thing I want to say to you on this is, like, this can happen at any point in your business, which is really exciting. Like, you might be in this game for 15, 20 years, things, just keep going and they evolve and you enjoy it. But like, sometimes there's this really fun moment of like, oh my goodness, this is really changing, or this is happening, or this is moving. Likewise, obviously, if you're at the beginning stages of your business, this can also kick in and you can have these like really quite high intensity moments of this. But I want to really speak to those of you who maybe you've kind of been in this wheelhouse of self-employment. Maybe you've had your businesses or multiple businesses for a long time, and there's nothing wrong with it all. It's sort of all moving and it's all grooving and you're sort of like, yeah, this is cool. But maybe you're feeling something like there's a change, there's a thing that's going to expand here. I'm going to really like move things forward. And if that is you, then I'm welcoming you and saying, like, run with this, like, use it as an opportunity and fuel for you to run further than you think you're gonna. So if you are in this phase that we've just sort of described, something that I think's really key is you deciding what is it that you want to get out of this experience. Like, some of this experience you're not going to be able to dictate for yourself, which is the joy of it, but some of it you can. And I think that's where this dance between intentionality and letting the world and the universe and whoever you want to put that down to do its own thing, and then you kind of coexisting and co-working with that to expand and multiply the kind of, I don't know, the impact, the true impact of what that can be. So have a think about, like, okay, yeah, look, what in your wildest dreams would be like incredible to happen? Like, really, this is the time for you to think very big, very like, whoa, okay, like very like, can that really happen? Like, what is the most crazy, silly, bizarre thing that you can think about that would be an outcome for your next stage of business? And this might be your personal brand as well. I think this happens a lot with personal brands, where the business might be doing its thing and that's really cool, and then you get to a phase where you're like, actually, do you know what, I'm really excited about building my personal brand. I'm excited to expand that. Or maybe you're going to build a business off your personal brand that isn't connected to your existing business. Or maybe it's like you want to be more visible and you want to increase, you know, who sees you and what your profile is. Because a lot of people, if you've been in business a while, you've got a network, you've got a sort of group of people who know you to some degree. The shift often is like, okay, now I'm going to really step into what that could be. Whether that is that you have 20,000 people on your email list and actually you're like, do you know what, why can't that be 200,000? And then you actually seeing what the impact of that would be and could be on your business, on your sales, on, you know, the opportunities that come to you. Or whether it's that you're sat there thinking, do you know what, I've been playing in this rhetoric, like I've been putting myself in this niche, I've been giving myself this label. And this has happened to clients recently, actually. Recording this in July of 2024. And it's happened, I want to say 2 or 3 times in the last month, where people are kind of realizing, they're like, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I've been sort of like shoehorning myself into something, or I've been saying that I'm this, but actually I can be broader than that. But it's like this idea of giving yourself permission to be able to step into it, or like allowing yourself that space to be like, who do I actually want to be? Rather than what makes me money, what do people know me for, what do I get referrals for? Like, referrals is this thing that people get themselves really het up in. And I think what's difficult is because regardless of whether you have a business where you're the deliverer of the service, whether you know, have a product business and you get a lot of referral that way and you have an amazing referral system built out, whether you are someone who has a whole team of people doing delivery for you, but you're still in charge of the sales, any of those categories, when you have referral built well, it's really hard to pivot. It's really hard to turn away and say, no, actually, we're not going to do that anymore. And what I want to remind you is your referrals can still work. There are many things we can do with your referral system where the same people that are referring you can still refer you for your new piece of whatever you're doing. But I understand that that comes up as a panic. What am I going to do? And something I wanted to sort of explore today is this differentiation between identity and business action. So identity and business action are so intertwined. And identity is such a huge part of your leadership development. It's such a huge part of how you how quickly you can evolve in business. But who you identify as and what your business identifies as and what you label it as will massively dictate how successful or how much you capitalize on this moment of feeling like things are really changing, something's in the air, like things are moving. So where can you challenge your identity? And where can you really kind of take a step back and go, why am I saying that I am X, Y, and Z thing? Who has said that to me? Does that serve me anymore? What would a better label be? What would a better niche be? What would feel really full-bodied, like, yes, that feels cool? And for some people, it's like, what feels scary? Because for some people, it's like, you know, it's not a case of this is going to feel great straight away. Most of my clients, when we're in this phase, it feels uncomfortable. And I'm sort of suggesting things to them like, not sure, I don't know. And sometimes you get a like full-bodied yes. But a lot of the time it's quite scary. So don't hum and ha over whether you're picking the right thing, because again, we can evolve and we can move and we can change all the time. But pick something that feels exciting to you. Like that usually is the word I use, because excitement is sort of anxiousness, nervousness, fun. There's a hope in there. There's a kind of explorativeness to it. Like there's so much in excited it can mean that excited is usually a good word. Like, what does this make you feel excited? Versus, does this feel really comfortable? Does this feel like the perfect fit? Because the reality is it's probably not going to feel like the perfect fit, because you've probably not got a lot of evidence to suggest to you that that is the right path for you. And just so we're clear on like what we're referencing here and what I'm talking about, I'm suggesting to you that like it can be as small as like what you introduce yourself as when you meet people, or what your Instagram bio says. Like, do you say that you are, I don't know, a health coach? Maybe you do. Great. But maybe you're like, actually, there's more to it than that. Or I can be more niche. Or actually, I can own a certain part of this market. Like, where can you really lean into something? For a business, like if we talk about like an overarching business, let's talk about a marketing agency, for example. It's very easy for people to say, oh yeah, we're a full service marketing agency, or we, like to do pay-per-click. That's where we specialize. Sometimes founders or CEOs or MDs will get this understanding of, do you know what? We're really good at this sort of piece of what we do. We're really good at working with this type of client. And then they're like, they hum and ha over it for ages. And they're like, should we specialize? Should we not? Do we go there? Do we not? And there's this sort of dance. And whilst I'm not saying put all your eggs in one basket, and I'm not saying like try and niche to the hill, because you don't have to, for some businesses, it's like a propeller for their growth. Like once you actually niche down into what is it that you're trying to do and who can you service the best. It's not who can you service, full stop. It's who can you service the best. Who do you like servicing? Who is a win for your servicing team? Because especially if you have an agency and you are not the one that is delivering most of the work, you are interested in your profit margin. But like, there's a difference between what is good for your profit margin and what is the business like to service, or who does the business like to service. And often that dance, sometimes you're sort of banging your heads against the same drum. Like you can have different people in the business or different people in the agency, and they're all sort of like, oh, okay, well, we like this one, or this one costs us loads of billing time, or this one's all right. And you have this like dance between one another without actually explicitly just calling it as being what it is, saying what it is, and saying, right, well, actually, these are really great. The profit margin's quite decent. They're really, all right to work with. And starting to kind of allow yourself to go down paths or explore new paths that are similar to that niche or industry or type of client. Or, is it a founder-owned business? Do you find that they're an absolute nightmare? Do you prefer a venture-funded business? Like really understanding what is it about certain pieces of your business that works and what is it that doesn't. Because often we cling on to the stuff that doesn't work because it's comfortable. Often it means we're being of service. Often it means that we are kind of adherent to past kind of beliefs of what is right and wrong, past beliefs of what a business should be, past beliefs of this idea we've got to work really hard to make any money. Like there's so much that gets built into why we will or won't kind of sort of step into that new version of ourselves. So the other piece of this is that, yes, you can consciously create and capitalize on some of this stuff. There is also an element, depending on where you sit on this spectrum of mindset, of manifestation, of kind of letting the universe do its thing, there's an element of this comes into play. And I would argue in this phase of business, like if you're in this piece where you're like, things feel really exciting and like, I know we're on the cusp of something, like we're on the cusp of something going really well and signing X amount of clients or getting the revenue to this thing or, being really visible or growing followers to this amount. Like there is a huge amount of stuff that you cannot control in that. And I think accepting that's really important. And I think understanding what season of business you're in is so critical for this. Because there's certain seasons of business where you are in control more than you think. And then there's other seasons of business where you're not. This is a season where you're not as in control as you are in some other ones. What I mean by that is, during a kind of scaling period, you're in control quite a lot of things. Growth is slightly different because some people, you'll see some people and you'll be like, how do they grow so fast and I don't? And that's a whole different episode. And there's a whole plethora of reasons as to why that is. Scaling, you have a lot of control. And yes, the mindset's just really important. Yes, your non-practical, non-physical stuff is crucial. But the scaling phase, you are very in control. I also believe in the startup phase, you're really in control. Like, you need that other stuff, the kind of non-tangible stuff, to pull you through and develop you as a founder. But in terms of you actually getting the business going, you're often in control a lot. What this point you're at, where you're at this phase that we're talking about, can literally be like, it feels like a day, it might be that it feels like a year, it might feel like multiple years, where you're like, things are really taking off, things are going to go, like things are pushing, things like that. I would say that phase typically is like a month, like sort of 3 to 6 months, sometimes 2. That tends to be, but it can be days and it can be years. During that phase, there is an element of just surrendering and letting the universe or the world or whatever you believe in do its thing and take you on the path that you can't see and pull up the stuff that you're like, I've never thought of that, or kind of take you down a road that questions everything that you believe to be true about yourself. You have to let that take place. So you marry the two, you marry the action and you marry the kind of manifestation piece. And you know that I'm a real advocate of action and strategy, but I also really believe in this other side of stuff. And I believe in, you have to energetically get yourself to a point that is going to allow for that all to work. Because sometimes you can plug away really severely at the kind of action and the strategy. But if you do not have the belief there, if your identity is not there, if your core understanding of who you are isn't there, if the leadership to kind of hold yourself through the challenge is not there, that action and strategy piece is really difficult. So what tends to happen at this phase is actually people do let the kind of untangible manifestation mindset, kind of fatalism, like letting the universe do its thing, take over. And people often get into a state of reflection paralysis where they just sort of like, they just sit and process a lot and they sit and think about a lot and they think and think and think. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. However, there is a time limit to that. And there is a time limit because your other part of your brain kicks in and you're like, oh, I need to do something practical now. Oh, I need to make some money. And there's like this wave and you go through these waves. And sometimes the peaks are really frequent and sometimes there's like long gaps and then higher peaks and long gaps. What you need to really learn is this balance, which is hard. It's something that everybody's trying to do all the time. Having this balance of being able to take a bit of action, take some practical reflections, really look from a strategic perspective, whilst holding yourself and being open-minded and being open to receiving information and receiving kind of prompts or signs or whatever you want to call it, and marrying the two together. Now, this is an ever ongoing adventure, in my opinion. And it's something you get better at and you'll have moments of being really good at it and moments where you're like really struggling with it. Learning this balance is the key of actually getting this all to work and for you to really capitalize on whatever that situation is that is presenting to yourself. So, for example, I have a client who, they are amazing. They have a really large membership. They have other things inside of their business, but one of the things is their membership, and it is a low-cost membership. It's for a very specific group of people, and they are in a process of scaling that membership. So they're not growing it, they're literally scaling it because they're getting more people in. So I think they've already got, God, let me make sure this is right. I don't know if it is. I think they've hit 600 members. the potential of who can join is like, there's thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of people could join. So they're at this point of scaling it. Now, this year, they've already grown it significantly. And in January, we had a one-on-one call. They're in a different program as well, like a year-long low-touch program, but they had a one-on-one with me in January. And we had this really interesting conversation of, it was an hour-long call. And they came for one thing, and we ended up on the call going through a whole different set of stuff, because I was like, hang on a minute, we need to backtrack here, and really laid out some real long-term vision stuff of how big is this business going to get, what's the goal, what's the exit plan, like, do you want investment, etc., etc. So they've got a really niche, amazing business. The growth that they've experienced really good growth from January to now. The speed of their growth is really being determined at the minute of how fast they can develop as founders, how much their belief can, how much their openness, their expansion of being able to hold more in their business and in their lives. And, you know, they're normal people. They've got loads of stuff going on at home. They've got various life events happening and fun and exciting stuff and also challenging stuff. And so you've got your business, you've got your life, you've got all the other many things that are taking your time, and it's hard. But their growth is really being determined at the minute by how much can they stretch forward? How much can they leap forward every single month? And I see them twice a month in a container that we have. And it's really interesting to see at the minute, they are running fast in terms of, you can, every time I see them, I can see that there is a development there and there's a process in there. Now, that sounds really quite unlike me, because I think you'd probably expect me to say, well, it comes down to the ad spend and it comes down to the strategy and it comes down to this, that, and the other. And it does, right? But the pure decision of how much you're going to spend on the ads, that comes from this internal belief. It comes down to the identity stuff. It comes down to how fast can you move forward in terms of the growth and the scaling and who you're becoming and where the business is and who the business is becoming. So what hopefully I'm trying to demonstrate here is, this stuff affects your decision making. The non-tangible stuff, the identity stuff, the belief stuff, the like, who is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? How successful is it going to be? How big is it going to get? That is all affecting your decision making, which therefore impacts your strategy, which therefore impacts your action, which therefore impacts the result. And so you can't discount the mindset stuff. You can't discount the leadership stuff. And you hear me talk about leadership quite a lot. For me, leadership encompasses this kind of mindset, internal development, personal development, manifestation stuff. That falls for me into the kind of emotional intelligence leadership realm. And I choose to call it that because for me, that's what it connects with. And I know for some people, it helps them it feel more tangible if they've struggled with the word of, you know, personal development, for example. What I want you to kind of really get on board with is this idea that, like, if you don't take up that work and don't want to get involved with it, it massively impacts the growth trajectory. Because the reality of it is for that client, for example, they don't work like really closely with me, which is fine. Between January and now, they could have had even more growth than they've had. And they haven't. Now, there's various different reasons for that. And let me preface this, everybody's growth journey is their growth journey. There's no right or wrong. There's no, like, we don't have to get somewhere at the fastest way we possibly can, because that's not what everybody wants to do, and that's okay. So this isn't a game of, like, you don't have to sit there and figure out, well, I should be here and I should be there, because that will just make you miserable, and I wouldn't recommend that. But what I'm saying is like, their growth trajectory is determined at the minute by their ability to grow as leaders, by their ability to develop fast, by their ability to make better decisions. And that all comes from who they believe they are. And as they continue to grow, that is only going to get more and more key. And that's why when people come and work with me one-on-one, this is why they come and work with me one-on-one. Because yes, we spend some time doing strategy, building strategy, creating strategy, evaluating it, kind of creating next steps, looking at action plans. That is 100% true. But there is also a massive piece of my work that is around identity, that is around pushing who they believe, of what they believe is possible, what output level is. Like, it comes down to simple things. Like, someone might come to me and I give them a set of to-dos and they say, well, that'll take me 3 months. And I turn around and go, I want it to take 2 weeks. And they're like, what are you telling me? Like, this is ridiculous. That isn't about me giving them an unsustainable to-do. That is about me saying, step into who your new identity is, because the new identity can do that. And again, that's not, it's not a like forceful thing of they have to do it in 2 weeks, otherwise I'm going to be really pissed off and I think that they're rubbish entrepreneur. Not at all. But what it helps people to do is, it's the same with pricing, it's the same with sales activities, the same with offer development, it's the same with team support and like development in their teams, building them out better. This comes down to expectation of what you think is possible. So people come to me with a set of expectations of what they think is possible. I turn around and go, well, actually, I want it in this time or that way, or can we do it in this sense? And the immediate thing is like, oh, I don't know. Or sometimes it's like, yeah, cool, okay, that's exciting, that's a challenge. But most people, it's like a fear. And then once they start leaning into it, and this is where the one-on-one support comes in, because if we see each other one-on-one for 60 minutes twice a month, for example, that's when we can really go into this back and forth of really configuring, okay, well, what is stopping you from taking that action? What is stopping the new identity from forming? What of the old, identity from like 10 years ago that you're still holding on to? Like, what is it about that that's impacting your strategy implementation? Because strategy implementation is the difference between it really working and it really expanding. Going back to this amazing client that we have who has a membership, they are entering into a new vibe into their business because they've got a new kind of setup that's going on because of a life event. And so they are now having to step into this new experience where their team is expanding at quite a rapid rate. They've never run a business before previously. They've been in business a long time, but they've not had this team before. And they come from like a public sector way of working, which is different. And I think people really, that's a whole different episode, but it's a different experience. So they are like elevating themselves in so many different directions and different business functions right now. And that is hard. Like, it's hard to do. And I am the first person to turn around and say, it is exhausting, it's draining, it's tough. So the ability for you to capitalize on this moment you feel of like things are shifting, things are changing, things are moving is going to come at a cost, right? It is going to be draining most of the time. It shouldn't be hell though. Like, it shouldn't feel awful. It shouldn't feel unpleasant. You should still be able to enjoy it. But it's this duality holding situation. Yes, it's like, I'm enjoying this, but it is challenging me. I am feeling this kind of push and pull on a daily basis, but every month or every week, I can see how this is moving the business further forward. And this is the real key bit of where people start to really develop their ability to experience duality, hold it, and then value it. And the value piece is the really important piece, okay? Like, being able to say, this is really shit, but this is really good, and I understand that the two can coexist together, two truths can exist at the same time, and I can live comfortably and okay in myself, even though X, Y, and Z thing is happening. And that is like a whole thing. Yeah, that's a constant learning and a constant refinement. It's something that we're all constantly trying to move through, and will help you in every part of your life. But for my amazing clients, and they are so fabulous, like, they're just perfect, and I'm so excited for the next 10 years of their business, because it's going to really explode and really expand. And this year alone has been huge for them, but that's just like a tiny amount of where they're going to go. For them, the rest of the year is a challenge of, how far can I grow? How far can I bet on myself? How far can I keep myself focused, but accepting of what's coming in, and accepting that I can't control everything, and accepting of there's going to be opportunities that present themselves that I don't quite know of right now. This episode, I know, has been a bit of an explorative one, but I hope really useful. I hope it's kind of sort of got you thinking, and maybe just provided some reassurance that you're on the right path, and maybe just provided more kind of like gusto for you to be like, yes, I'm going to keep going with this. I'm going to really lean into it. My top tips for making this all happen and really capitalizing on this moment you've got of this excitement and this understanding, this core belief of like, this is going to work and something's really cool's happening, is to listen to yourself, is to journal or write stuff down or speak, record yourself speaking about what you're thinking about. Like every day, writing down, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, this is what's worrying me. Scripting that out is I think one of the most powerful things. And I think writing it on paper is way better than just typing it, but that's just me. There is a proven link between the kineticness of writing something down and that being an outlet. I think if you can and you're able to, some sort of exercise or movement, this bilateral stimulation when you're walking, like even if you just walk, that will help you process stuff. And I know many people who are doing their exercise thinking about the business, which probably shouldn't, maybe think about something else. But if you are, that idea of being able to walk whilst you're doing it is really effective for processing stuff, releasing stuff, and finding clarity in what you're trying to think about. There is an element of getting support so that you can have a mirror. And I think this is important, okay? Like, you kind of need someone to shine a mirror to say, okay, you're saying that. What do you mean? Or you're saying this to me, but your action is X, Y, and Z. Like, that's the beautifulness that we have with clients sometimes, where it's like, if they're comfortable and they're, they want that, that's what they're paying for. They're like, I want the savageness. I want the real, like, in-depth stuff that can be hard to hear. It's like, okay, well, let's really go through who they're showing up as, but what's actually going on. And we kind of bring that up. So that would be a top tip, of having that support of someone you trust, who you can really go deep into how you're sort of presenting and showing up. And also this idea of having space to think and enjoy yourself is really important. Like, in this phase, you might be, but typically you're not in this like startup phase, maybe been in business ages, but you need to be enjoying yourself at the same time. So like at least once a week, you need to be doing something that is fun to you, that you enjoy, that feels nice, that feels like you're sort of living your dream somewhat. And I'm not saying that has to be like huge and extravagant. It doesn't have to cost thousands of pounds or anything, but if you can, whether that's going out for lunch or whether it's spending time with your family or like doing something, traveling, doing something that really like sets you on fire, that really like feels good and that takes you out of thinking about the business. That you can't think about the business all the time, especially in this phase. You need to let the universe, the manifestation, everything that you're doing, do its own thing. The other thing I would say is you need to be writing your goals out every day. In this phase, your connection to your goals is like so critically important that you have to sort this out. So like, you've got to be really connected to and make them specific if you can, make them really clear. Do a visualization piece where you're thinking about, okay, those goals have happened. How does that feel? What do you do every day? What's the kind of smell? What do you do? The senses, like go through all the senses and think about what that means for you with those goals attained. What does goal attainment look like for each one of those things? Who do you become as a person? What does your identity mean? What do you look like? What do you do on a morning? Do you have loads of clutter in your house? Do you not? And this isn't a case of me going through and saying that you've got to have this perfect life in order to make your dream business, because you don't. I think there's many of us that are walking examples of that. But doing this mindset work is important and is the difference between this kind of marrying of the two and the blend of the two, of the structure stuff and the mindset stuff together, is the difference of you really capitalizing on it and not. The other thing would be like vision boarding. If you've done a vision board at the start of the year, get that one back out, but also create a new one. Create a one specific for this season. You can do, the next 6 weeks. Who is you as the founder or you as a business owner in the next 6 weeks? What do they look like? What do they present themselves as? And really be aware of your time. That's another really important point. Be understanding of, how much time am I going to be in this phase? How much time do I want to be in this phase? How much time am I going to allow myself to do X, Y, and Z thing? And being open to challenging yourself on time, because when you're in this phase, it's very easy for time to pass you by, and sometimes you can get like 6 months down the line, you feel like you've sort of been in a bubble and you haven't really done what you wanted to do, because of the time just went by and you weren't sort of conscious of it. those are my tips. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Come and tell me if this has spoke to you. Like if you are someone and you're like sat here and you're like, oh my goodness, this episode came at the right time, or maybe you needed it, or maybe you're like nodding your head all the way through it, feel free to come and spark up a conversation. I'm on Instagram at may.james_. And yeah, I look forward to speaking to you soon. Take care. Bye.